I have been doing some short live streams during the week where I often talk about if you want your questions answered during a live stream. I will do that Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific. This is one of those videos. I have an intro where I'm going to cover a topic, giving you time to get your questions into the comments. And my goal is to get to all of those questions tonight if possible. I have a course call tonight at 6, so this video will go until about 5:30, 5:45 or so, depending on how many questions there are. Could be over in 5 minutes if everybody's really quiet, but let's not have that happen. The topic I want to start this video with tonight is rentals I would not buy. How many videos have we seen of how to run the numbers on a rental, how to pick a market, how to choose a strategy, how to save, how to make more money, all these ways to get into real estate? We list out our wants. Imagine how our relationships would work out if all we listed out was our wants and not our red flags. So in this, I want to cover around 10, not in any specific order, things that eliminate a rental from my wish list. And we'll start with math first, because most people start with math. They'll say things like, I want $100 per door, or I want a 10% cash on cash return. When you run math, the goal is to beat the area average. So if somebody says, I would not want a rental that loses money. Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time calls these alligators. I don't want an alligator. If somebody says, I don't want a rental that breaks even, that depends on what break even is. Are you even accounting for future repairs, maintenance, and vacancy? You could be losing money with a break-even property. If your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance is $1,000 and your rent is $1,000, you're losing money on those future repairs. So for me, that return on investment, that cash on cash return, has to also account for expenses that are going to come up in the future. The things I want to talk about, and we'll start with this. I do not want to buy a property that is not in my market. If somebody reaches out to you and says, I have a real estate deal, here's the numbers. It's so much better than what you've been buying, but it's in a new market. If you want to go to Gary, Indiana, and you reach out to a real estate agent and you say, I have California money or Washington State money, and I want to buy a rental here in Gary, Indiana, they're going to show you deals that look amazing, that have a cash on cash return that you haven't seen in a decade in your market. That's a deal that every local investor passed on. If you're going to invest in a property at a distance, out of state, or even where you live, before you buy a rental, make that area your market, like Millennial Mike did. He could have invested in Gary, Indiana at any point in time, but he had his friend Mark Matsky investing there for years as a litmus test to say, okay, you try to fall on your face a few times and see if you can get your systems in place. And once they are, and you've vetted that market, and I do some research for a long period of time, then he finally bought a turnkey property. He didn't just go and buy in another state. I didn't just buy locally. I was saving for 2 years, studying my market for 2 years, getting my debt to income covered by renting out my house, being bankable by being in a new industry for 2 years. But in those 2 years, I was studying the rentals in my market. So when I purchased that first duplex, it was in my market. I wouldn't have bought in another state, even if the price was better and the rents were better, because I didn't know the market. I'd be missing a lot of things. I don't want to buy a rental that's not in my market. That doesn't mean don't invest out of state or at a distance. It just means before you do that, make that your market. I will not own a rental property in an HOA. I need to come up with an accurate acronym for HOA, but I haven't done it yet. So in Futureland, I will. The problem isn't the HOA fees that you have no control over and can go up in the future and tend to always go up in the future. It's really a twofold problem. The first one is the board of directors for an HOA is generally made up of people who have nothing but time to mess with their neighbors. No thanks. I don't want that in my life. But the thing that really stops me in my tracks with HOAs, this takes me out of any condos or anything like that, is random assessments. The HOA can decide that something that you don't think needs to be done can be done for $50,000 to $150,000, and everybody in the HOA has to come up with $5,000 to $50,000 to cover your portion of it. And if you don't do it, you just get a lien against your property. Right? Matt the lumberjack landlord had a 70,000-ish random assessment come up on one of his properties in an HOA, and he basically had to sell. It was when he was first starting. So an HOA for me is an instant deal killer. I personally, this doesn't mean the strategy doesn't work. We're talking about properties I will not buy. I will not buy a property that doesn't have fixed rate debt. I don't want a loan reevaluation period. I don't want a balloon payment. I don't want all of the things that can happen in the future that can make me lose sleep. I want to fire and forget a mortgage. And the only reason I pay attention to my mortgage is to see what is my interest rate at in case rates get so low, it makes sense to refinance to increase my cash flow. So that has kept me in 1 to 4 units, right? Single family house to a fourplex you can get with fixed rate debt. Now, there are some DSCR loans out there with Velocity Mortgage, Convoy Home Loans, and many others where they offer fixed rate debt up to 10 units. So I did have some searches going on up to 10 units, didn't find any that made sense. So all my current properties are 4 units or less. Fixed rate debt is a requirement, but what does that mean? The red flags are if this requires lending that isn't fixed rate debt, it's a no for me. I don't want to buy a property that doesn't encourage limited tenant turnover. Right? I talk about my wants. What do I want? I want side-by-side units. So I have less noise complaints, right? But what will I not buy? I eliminate properties that I couldn't put a washer dryer in. Now, it either has to have washer dryer hookups now, or I have the ability to put in washer dryer hookups, not only at a cost that would still make the math make sense, see step 1 above, but it has the space for it. It has the wet wall access that I would need. There was some place where I'd be able to put it in. So that has cost me some deals where I've said, no, that's not what I want, because any tenant that doesn't have washer dryer hookups that's using shared laundry or a laundromat is just waiting for a place to open up. So this includes parking. If I am buying a duplex, I want to make sure there's at least 4 parking spots. And maybe if I was buying a duplex that was studio on each side or 1 bedroom on each side, I might go for 1 parking spot. But most of my tenants have at least 2 vehicles. So I want tenants to have easy parking, helping me limit tenant turnover. Now, this next thing I'm going to say tends to irritate people and gets me some comments where I block the viewer. Right? I will save you the hassle of having to watch my content. If I say the word plandemic, people block my content. I get it. You think I'm being political? No, both sides planned that. So political is when you choose a side. Both sides suck. And to me, it doesn't matter who's in office. I'm going to have a plan for either way. But I don't want to own a rental property in a crazy liberal market. If you can actually articulate that your beliefs are that housing is a right and nobody should profit from home ownership, why would I want to buy a rental there? So it's my opinion that anybody who owns a property as a rental inside King County, inside LA County, is crazy. I understand being in a liberal state like California or Washington, right? Kern County, where my brother owns rentals, or Pierce or Thurston County, where I own rentals in Washington, still a liberal state, but you have some level of balance to where you can actually get an eviction. You can, you currently don't have the strong rent control, which makes landlords richer and tenants homeless. So when I search in Pierce County or Thurston County, Washington, I don't include anything inside the city limits of Tacoma. So I will not own in a place where the regulations are too bad for me to own a rental. So there could come a time where the regulations in my entire state go so left that I left and I sell everything and move to another state. It's entirely possible. It hasn't happened yet, but who knows what the future holds. I would not own a rental in an area that I wouldn't go and feel safe, right? If the police can't go there alone and they have to go in pairs, I would probably not want to own a rental there. If you contact property managers and they say, we won't manage a property in that area, I probably wouldn't want to own a rental in that area. So this kind of comes down to classification of rental, but there are some Class A areas that turn dangerous, right? Ruston, Washington was a very high-end place. And in the last year, it's become one of the crime central areas of Washington. So would I want to own a property there? 2 years ago, yes. Now, not so much. So that brings me to the classification of properties. There are generally 4 that people refer to. You have Class A properties, super high-end, gated communities, maybe a doorman. Class B It's your nicer neighborhoods, better school districts. You have Class C, your working class, and you have Class D, which is your war zones. I specifically talk about I target Class C rentals. That's what I prefer, but I have reasons why I don't want to own A or D. I don't want to own in a war zone because I can't go there safely. I can't send a handyman there or a contractor there safely. A property manager might not want to manage it for me. Tenant turnover is going to be higher. Like there's a lot of reasons to justify not wanting a Class D property, but there's a long list of reasons why I don't want a Class A property. The more someone pays for something, the more picky they tend to be. I don't want picky tenants. I want tenants that are happy because I hit my 3 criteria with my rental: safe, clean, functional. I'm not looking for super high-end finishes. I'm not looking for the problems that come in an economic downturn with Class A rentals, right? I've said many times in my videos that since we started tracking the data in 1940, rents have never once gone down market wide. Right now, there are some local areas where rents can go down. So it is possible that rents go down. So you should invest planning like they will, even though they never have market wide. But in 2009, Class A rentals, right, not the C that I invest in, but the Class A rentals went down because luxury goes away during economic struggles. People can move to a B or a C market to save money. B tenants can move to a C market, which increases demand. So during a recession, my rents went up. My rents will go up if there's another recession. So I don't want Class A. I don't want Class D. So it's not that I prefer C, it's that I actually don't want the other two. So if somebody came to me and said, here's a Class A property, an amazing deal, significantly less than what it's worth, I'd probably flip it. I wouldn't own it as a rental. I learned this after retiring. I don't want a BRRRR property. The buy, rehab, rent out, refinance, repeat strategy. When you're starting, I think this is a really bad strategy to start with because there's so many slips between a cup and a lip that you can make mistakes. You mess up your ARV, mess up your timeline, mess up your rehab costs, mess up what interest rates are going to be in 6 months. Millennial Mike having them double in the 6 months when he was doing 2 BRRRRs. Now he was smart. He didn't start with this strategy. He was a couple of years in, had the cash flow from rentals and the reserves to handle a problem like that popping up. So in growth mode, I think an established investor with systems in place can successfully do the BRRRR strategy or handle it when it goes wrong. So I didn't want it starting out. I didn't do it in growth mode. And when I retired, I did my first and what I call my last BRRRR. I don't want to do this again. I purchased a property for $400,000. I put about $62,000 into it, maybe $63,000. Really should know that. Yeah. Money gets fuzzy when you don't have to worry about it anymore. Now it's worth about $750,000. So I generated a couple $100,000 that didn't exist a couple years ago, a year ago, and it wasn't worth it. I don't want to do it again. I would have rather spent this entire winter scuba diving in Thailand than managing a project like this. So I don't want another BRRRR project. If I add a property to my portfolio in the future, it will be because of the problem that I'm trying to get you to have, that the cash keeps piling up and you want to put it somewhere. And for me, since I've mastered this asset class, I'll add another rental, but it will be something like the first ones that I acquired. Little to no work, rent ready or already occupied, not a BRRRR. I don't want to own a property next to a noisy anything, nightclub, train station, airport, landing strip, whatever it is, where the noise could cause the tenant turnover. This is a list of about 10 things that I think I'm wrapping up before my timer went off, which I'm super impressed with. It's supposed to be like 17 minutes. How far are we into this? We are unaware. 14 minutes. Wow. Okay. You should know the things you want. And I can elevator pitch those off really quick, right? I want more than 10 miles apart from my property, so I'm pulling tenants from other sources. I want them close to several economic drivers like a base, a port, a college, hospital, Boeing, or Amazon, large population. I want side-by-side units, so I have less noise complaints and one plumbing issue doesn't affect 2 tenants. I want washer dryer hookups. I want a garage and at least 2 bedrooms because more space means more stuff. Like I can rattle this off, right? But have you ever articulated and written down all of your don'ts? Now relate that to dating. You probably know what you want, right? The women I know have the group of 6s. They want 6 feet, 6 pack, 6 figures, and any other sixes you can think of. But if you ask the girl, what are your red flags? What are your things you won't date? Or you ask your guy friends, when you go looking for somebody, what are the deal breakers? Most people have an idea, but if they've never written it down, don't make that mistake with your rentals or your investing. If you're investing in stocks and this real estate stuff is kind of irritating, but you want your other questions answered, I get it. Know your no's as well as you know your wants, and your life's going to be a lot better. The rest of this video is going to be dedicated to answering your questions. Fuzzy money. Yes, Levita, that was a great way to put it. There was a young lady on Christian and Cody's channel when they were doing Christian and Cody multifamily strategies. And she did something where she created somewhere between $10,000 to $30,000. If you go up to most of the people we know and say, how much do you make an hour? How much did you make last week? What's your rent? They'll give you an exact dollar amount. But when you get into investing and you make money not matter eventually, the difference between $10,000 and $30,000 in profit is fuzzy because it doesn't matter. It was worth doing for 10, so it'd be great if it hit 30. But do we really care as long as it was worth doing? Kind of like when everybody talks about that list of everything that I just did of things I won't do. I don't think I've heard anybody articulate to me. Anytime I ask somebody about their investing in real estate, they give me a cash on cash return, or when they're brand new, a cash per door metric, which means nothing. So if you haven't listed out all of these things that could be deal breakers for you, you won't recognize them when you see them. Because experience is that thing that lets us recognize mistakes when we're making them again. Howdy, everybody in the comments. Glad to see you here. I say things on my channel that might make you block my content, and it can save you time. I use the R word. I don't like, and I hate both sides. I use strong terms. I use the word hate, and I don't think I'm weak enough not to use that. I hate people on the left, right? It is okay that capitalism has solved almost every problem the world's faced in the last 100 years. It literally stopped what Hitler was doing. I also hate religious people. Tell me one good thing religion has done to the world. And I'll tell you, I agree with religious people more than they think we don't. As an atheist, right? There's around 3,000 gods. You don't believe in 2,999 of them? I just don't believe in one more. Literally one more than you. And that's all I disagree. So I can irritate both sides. If you're easily irritated, don't watch my content. I don't want to grow a YouTube channel with people that can be easily irritated because it's not easy investing. You have to have thick skin to own stocks, to sit back and go, the stock market just went down 12%. I should take my money out before it goes down more, and think that's a really bad idea. You have to have that thick skin to think, I'm not touching this during a downturn. I'm going to continue to dollar cost average and not lock in my losses. If you're investing in real estate, you have to be ready for the vitriol that's going to be spewed your way when anybody finds out you're a landlord. Because not everybody has the same cohesive friendship that we have in the one rental at a time community. This is an area where people want to see you succeed. This is going to be one of the only places you experience that. You tell your coworkers, you tell your boss, right? I was the president of a CDL school. And if I encouraged everybody to get into real estate and make work optional, but as a manager, what was my role? My role was to look for the people who were buying big houses they couldn't afford and buying big trucks they couldn't afford because the CDL school, they all had the compensator syndrome going on, had to drive big trucks, and think that person's in a lot of bad debt, that they want some overtime. This is a rare group of people where they want to see you succeed. You need to have thick skin for when you're not around these people. And you might want to spend more time around these people. Howdy, Levita, question. Go. I keep forgetting to ask, when it is said that the market price in a rate cut, how is this known? How do we know what the markets are pricing in for a rate cut? So I'm not sure I understand the exact question. We might have to answer that during a members only Zoom or course Zoom or something where we're in Zoom and you can explain the question really well. But So let me get my words straight. Banks lend on margin, right? The Fed doesn't set what your mortgage rate is going to be. Two things impact what your mortgage rate is going to be. The Fed has a rate that they raise and lower to impact they want to keep inflation around 2 to 3%, and they want to stay at full employment. Like that's their goal. One of their levers that they use is the rate. So they'll raise and lower that. That's not what your mortgage rate is based on. Your lender is going to look at that. That's the amount that they're going to borrow from banks or from the Fed. So there'll be a little bit in there because they have to lend on margin, right? But then you also have lender fear. So when the Fed says we're going to offload our assets, which puts more risk on the lenders, you're going to see the gap between what the Fed rate is and what your mortgage rate is expand because that larger margin compensates for the increased risk. When you see the Fed saying, okay, we're keeping assets on our books, we're going to there's QE and QT tightening and easing, quantitative when they're doing that, but they're in the retention mode and there's less risk for the lenders, you'll actually see the mortgage rate compress. So there have been times in 2022 where the Fed rate went up and mortgage rates went down because it compressed at the same time as rates increased because the Fed was still keeping things on their books. So when the market prices in a Fed rate cut, the Fed usually announces, here's what our plan is to do. And that either, because the mortgages will know what the rate is from the Fed to be able to adjust in the future. But what the Fed says is what kind of dictates the lender fear, which increases or decreases the margin. So it's a little more elusive than you can just go, okay, the Fed raised it 0.25%, so mortgages are going up 0.25%. No, it's the Fed raised the rates. And then they said, we're going to do quantitative tightening and get all these things off our books. And the lending fear goes through the roof. So then mortgage rates would go up. All-nighter hider, welcome back to the rest of the mainland. I hope it was a great trip. PE turned RE, waiting to hear McKinley Avenue. Yes, you need to know where your war zones are, right? If you're in Tacoma, it's McKinley Avenue. If you're in Tumwater, Washington, it's 301 T Street. You should know as an investor, and you can do a couple of things. You can actually, if you know any police officers, ask them, hey, where's the worst part of this town? They know. Call property managers and just say, hey, I'm thinking of buying rentals. Tell me the areas that you would not want to manage in, or you have the highest turnover in. You can get that information. And around here, it is McKinley Avenue. Family is all here. Regular suspects. Yes. Thank you, REI Jared. Great interview. A couple of you have been on Zuber's One Rental at a Time recently. That's good stuff. Congrats on your 4-4 Curtis. I'm not sure what is the 4-4. And 4-4 units leased up for August. Nice. There you go. Congratulations. That's huge. I remember we should do a video. Did you add the bedroom? I had one where I was choosing between adding a bedroom or not, and I'll actually tell you why I didn't. But I added a closet, which turned a 1-bedroom into a 2-bedroom, but there was room for a 3rd bedroom. Adam, howdy. Good to see you again. Somebody I met in person in Gary, Indiana, of all places. And then thanks, Dion, for your time, content, closing on our 3rd single-family house tomorrow. 3/4 of the way to the first goal, 4 houses, then we'll figure out the rest. Yeah, and thanks, Adam, for that. So Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time often talks about this, and I actually said this in an interview with Mindy Jensen that it's coming out next week. He has over 180 rentals. If Zuber got on every morning and said, hey, if you want to be financially free, you have to have 180 rentals, that's almost unattainable. My goal is not 180, so I don't know that I would have listened, but he's very smart, and he goes, get to 4. It's in his One Rental at a Time book, which you can get the Audible version. Let me know what you think, how you think the narrator did. Get to 4, then you figure out, do I like this? Do I just want 4 and they'll be paid off when I retire to give me a better retirement like his original plan? Or do you get 4 and realize this is a better drug than that drug that kills our dreams called a paycheck, and then you keep growing? Congratulations, and I look forward to seeing how you go with that. Native to Earth. I am no longer interested in single family. I have a single family search set up. So this is why you might still have the search set up. It's in a decade of searching, right? 11 years now, because my first purchase was 2013. So we're 11 years in from then. So like 12 or 13 years is what I say because I've started saving before buying that. I've never seen a single family house in my market that would cash flow. I have one that would cash flow because I bought it in 2000, right? And so owned it for over a decade before I started renting it and even lost money the first year. But I have that search set up because you never know what's going to pop up on the radar. That could be a good deal. And there's a hidden asset class that a lot of people miss. And I have said this in videos before, so I'll try to keep this short. Most investors know in many markets, single family or small multifamily, one performs better than the other. I have a friend who invests in Ohio. She likes single family. It does better in the market where she's at. I've never seen it here. So most investors will put in duplex, triplex, fourplex, small multifamily, or single family house, completely missing single family house with an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, auxiliary dwelling unit, detached, junior, granny flat, mother-in-law house, whatever it's called. 2 houses, 1 property. And it's how I got one of my best deals. I got a house with an ADU, and I don't know which one is which. There's a house and there's a duplex. And honestly, I think after looking at records, I think there was a house that they built a duplex on and then added an ADU. I haven't confirmed that, but that after now doing some electric work to it, that's what I think happened. I didn't do the work. The permanent electrician did, in case anybody's listening. I would have missed it if I didn't have that single family house search with ADU and all those other terms set up for it. So native to earth, yes, in your area, you might be like me and single family just doesn't make sense. But be looking for those ADUs. Kind of like Derek, that ADU guy who was just interviewed on BiggerPockets Money like a week ago and had a great interview. And his strategy is amazing with ADUs. He's much more skilled and energetic than I am, and he goes about building them. I just wanted to buy one. Because here's the difference between building and buying when it comes to ADUs. And it's subconscious. Most people don't even realize this. You might not even realize you're doing this now. When I say ADU, what do most people think of? A furnished or built out basement, a house built behind the primary house that's 1,200 square feet or less and is always less square footage than the house that the ADU is on the property of. That's what people think when you say ADU. But a lot of ADUs were made before the rules came out. And you end up with something like a duplex in a house or 2 5-bedroom houses on one property. One of them is an ADU, just because there's no other term for it here. The Wealth Building Journey, howdy. I didn't get as much hate as I thought I was going to on my comment. I got some hate that the dock I was standing on made everybody seasick, but so I'm sorry for that. But I was talking about 2024 is going to be called the golden age of buying real estate. I thought all the haters were going to come out of the woodwork because I said the reasoning. I didn't just go, hey, I think it's a great time to buy. I said, this is why people are going to say this was the year they wish they bought. And whenever you say something like that, the Crash Bros come out, the people who watch the Crash Bros and say, well, I want both sides of the story, even though one side's been wrong for a decade. They still watch both sides. They come out and they hit me with, actually so I was expecting dozens of negative comments, which are great. I got thick skin, love those too. I only got one, and I forget the person's name, and I don't want to call them any names, right? So I'm not going to say what my thought of them is. I'm sure you can read between the lines somewhere in there. But they said, I spent 10 minutes explaining why every single year somebody has said, don't buy now, wait a year or two. 13 sucks, 15 sucks, 18 sucks, 20 sucks, 24 sucks, don't buy. They left a comment saying, I think 2026 is going to be the best time to buy. Like, did they make that comment before they watched the video, or did they just not watch the video? Very entertaining. Cynthia, howdy. Good to see you here. Laura, good to see you here. Oculus, good to see everybody hanging out with us tonight. Cash flow is freeing. Thank you for the question. I appreciate the questions. That's where the comments, or where the content comes from. In order to have access to your locks at your rentals for maintenance personnel, do you pay for your own Wi-Fi? I have a video on my channel that says why I don't have Wi-Fi locks. Wi-Fi lock batteries that last 3 to 9 months. I have locks with batteries in them coming on 4 years now as a test to see how long they last. I like the schlag coated locks that I don't like Wi-Fi. I don't like anything extra running the battery, and I don't like the ones that have powered motors to extend and retract the locking mechanism. I want it to engage it so that we turn it and we disengage it so that the battery lasts longer, because all it ever does is engage the lock and disengage the lock so that it will turn when you turn it. So I don't have Wi-Fi access. I have a specific code for me that's accessible to every one of my locks. I have a code for handyman, and I'm easy to switch that out in case I ever stop working with a handyman. And I've had people ask me, are you comfortable with handyman having a code to your rental? Now, I'm going to say this really slow for the people in the back to make sure you understand. If you think a lock can keep your handyman out of your rentals, you need a new handyman. Eddie, howdy. I put an offer on my first deal today. Congratulations. House hack, single family with detached apartment. I will let you all know how it goes. That sounds like a house with an ADU. Good job. Let us know how it goes. That first offer is scary. I don't think the level of fear often changes too much until you get really kind of diversified, right? When I got my properties in several different markets and I had my reserves and I had 3 different types of tenants, I think that the fear really got, de-escalated quite a bit. But when you're starting out, it just kind of stays flatline. So Eddie, I'm just guessing. I don't want to put words in your mouth. So I'll say when I was making my first offer, you have this fear of, I made my first offer. What if they don't take it? What if I get outbid, right? There's a level of fear there. That'll shift to what if they do take it? Now you've got to pay for an inspection, pay for an appraisal, follow through, figure out, do I have my lease in place? Do I have tenants there? How do I get their leases? How do I get their deposits? Like, all of this fear just changes from what if they don't take my offer to, oh no, what if they take my offer? Then they take your offer and you get the money from title. And Josh and Mary Martin Properties went through this with their first duplex. They get a tenant in place, right? The fear goes, what if I can't find a tenant? Right? They spent a couple months fixing the place up. I'm really happy with how they were picky with their tenant. They didn't just take the first one that came along, right? They had some that were not quite qualified, and instead of lowering their expectations or requirements, they waited till they got a good tenant. They were afraid, what if I don't find a tenant? How many months will I have to pay my mortgage? Then they get the tenant in there, and then the fear changes to, well, I got a cashier's check, because that's how you get in my property. So I got first month's rent, deposit, maybe any pet fees. But are they going to pay the next month's rent? Because it's possible you put a professional tenant that knows how to get into a property and then forces a 6-month eviction to take all of your money. And then the fear changes after that. So congratulations, Eddie. I hope you understand that it's going to be stressful and is ultimately worth it. Pretty cool, everybody. See, this is a supportive group where Eddie said, look, I did this stressful thing, and a bunch of people are commenting saying, congratulations, Eddie, let us know how it goes. You are not often going to get that from your friends and coworkers. You go out and you say, I made an offer on a rental property. You're going to get, oh, you want to profit from somebody needing a place to live? Or why would you invest in an area where tenants don't have to pay and you can't evict them? Or this long list of reasons why it's a mistake. But here you're going to get, that's what we're trying to do. Good job. All-nighter hider. Creating your own HOA is a very powerful asset protection tool, but very specialized. I think Matt's done something like that, or he bought enough of the property to where he owned the HOA. Cash flow is freeing. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. It's the least we can do for Dion. It's appreciated every single time you hit the like button. An angel gets its wings. Now think through. That's an atheist saying the angel gets its wings. I'm not an atheist. I'm a pastor of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, and I do weddings, and as a pirate. So anybody in Washington State who wants to get married, I do weddings for free. You just have to be okay with a pirate showing up to do the ceremony. Lavita, the audible version of One Rental at a Time is wonderful. You might be biased. It wasn't wonderful when he first put it out. Mike actually put out One Rental at a Time paid Amazon to have an AI voice narrate it back when AI voices were obviously not very good. And he came out with a second book, and I said, look, don't narrate it with that again. Let me do it for you. And I had no idea what I was signing up for. It was 6 months of learning how ACX works and setting up a studio and getting the equipment. And I would do it for a friend again in the future at some point, but I wouldn't do it for $5,000 to narrate someone's book, right? That's how much of pain it was. And then when we were done, I said, okay, I'll do your first book too. And then we figured out how to replace it. Uh, Lost my place in the chat. Love it when it moves. That means that there are comments coming. And there was yeah, cash flow is freeing. I don't have Wi-Fi to access to my locks, but I do have a code that goes to mine. And I have a screenshot, not screenshot. I take a picture and I email it to myself. It's what I was doing for a while. I still probably do that. But what I have is in my phone, I have a contact, make a contact for the rental property. In the contacts notes is insurance, mortgage, times appliances were replaced, all of those things. I mean, I have my leather binder, which is like a dream book and like a dream board, but it's a book. But I also have a contact for every property that has a lot of detail in there. And the photo for the contact is this picture of the page for the coded lock that has the master code. Or if I changed the master code, because Schlag comes with a master code that's unique to each lock, versus when you buy something like a Defiant or one of those others, it comes with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you got to set up a new one. So if I've had any of those locks, because I did try some, I made a comparison video. Don't watch it if you don't like F-bombs. But I have the master code just in case I have a tenant that goes, oh, we'll change the code and keep the landlord out. Well, I have the master code. You'd have to change the locks. And if you're a landlord and a lock can keep you out of your property, you need a new landlord. You just drill it out. I had to drill my last tenant move out because they left the keys on the kitchen counter for me. Now, this was a property that I had acquired and never put coded locks in because it was a tenant. This was a tenant. I've had 2 or 3 of these with a flip phone, a checkbook, no interwebs at their house. I'm not going to make them learn how to use a coded lock. Congrats, Eddie. Taking action is a start and a big step towards better things. Absolutely. Lavita, I'm torn on HOA. I do like that they keep people accountable to keep their properties nice. Lavita, did you know that HOAs push down the property value? They don't inflate it. There's a myth, and it's propagated by lobbyists for HOAs out there that say if you have an HOA, your tenants will, your neighbors will keep their places nice, and the nicer the neighborhood is, the more your property value will appreciate. Supply and demand. When you eliminate a large group of demand, you eliminate a lot of the price. So you still have just as much supply, but you have homeowners that own in an HOA because of past experience. You have investors who don't want the problem. You have investors who don't want to be caught with a couple of other things that can happen with an HOA. This happened with a friend of mine, so this is not a hypothetical. Purchases in an HOA, lives there for a few years, turns it into a rental. It's a rental for about 5 years. Tenant moves out. The HOA had let the number of rentals in the area, which was allowed to be 10 or 20%, I forget which, went above the threshold. So he was not allowed to put another tenant in. He either had to move in, leave it vacant, or sell it. No. Nolan, howdy. How far outside of Tacoma would you be willing to invest? Let's say the town you're looking at doesn't have a strong job market. I do not invest based on job markets as far as that goes, especially since 2020 with remote work changing everything. I own in McKenna, Washington, that has less than 500 people as a population. There are commuters, there are remote workers. The numbers have to make sense. And when you do a search for a town, you can also use your mind. It's not always like a hard and fast yes or no. No. Are there 50 rental units available? And prices continuously dropping, right? That means there's a lack of demand. I recently did I think it was a members only, or maybe it was at the end of one of these videos where I let everybody jump into the Zoom. Let me know if you want to do that tonight. We might do that at the end. so the haters can get in and tell me how much they hate me when I block their content. But I said, let me look up my rental. My rental was the rental in like a 10-mile radius. That's the demand is there. Even if there's only 2 or 3 people looking for a rental, I'm the supply, the whole of the supply. So when it goes, how far out of Tacoma would I invest? My litmus test is how far am I willing to drive, because I still self-manage, to do a tenant turnover, to meet a handyman if there's an issue, right? Once I have a handyman that's been to a property a couple of times, I generally don't go there again, and they have the handyman that I've worked with for years deal with issues. So for me, it was about an hour from Tacoma in every direction, because I had lived in Spanaway and Ruston, and I was in around that area. Now I've moved out to Port Orchard. So I'm looking at Mason County and Kitsap County probably more in the future than I would have before. But I wouldn't go down to Centralia. So I'm naming towns in my state that don't matter to most of the people watching. An hour from where you live, maybe once you retire, an hour and a half or 2 hours. But when I was working, an hour was my limit. That's how far out I would go. And the job market thing, I mean, you want to know specifically what keeps people in an area. And the more rural you are, there's other things that draw people there, right? McKenna, Washington is a very small town. Yelm, Washington technically is kind of still a small town, but it's on the leeward side of the JBLM military base. So if you're in the military and you move to Washington because you get stationed here and you're from a large city, right? And you're used to city life, you're going to live in Lakewood or Tacoma, Compton, one of those 2 towns. You're going to be okay living there. But if you're from in the middle of, Duluth, wherever, and you like small town life and you get stationed at JBLM, you're going to live in Yelm or McKenna or Roy, right? Roy, as you can see, now entering Roy sign, now leaving Roy sign. That's why there's demand even in small places like that. Nighter Hider. Is it coincidence that the pandemic, thank you. I know we're going to irritate some people when we say that, but don't worry, I attack both sides. The event allowed the Fed the means to provide liquidity to the world. Step 17, 2019 repo market blow up says no. All night harder. Fuzzy money is the goal. Yes. Croydon, howdy. KS, in the current market, is conventional financing still good? Current area average price doesn't get me cash flow on at least $300 with a 10% below area average rents. So the two things that I shifted as I expanded my market out, because this is one of the reasons why this is the golden age of real estate. My 2024 is one of the best years to buy real estate in. Remote work has pushed up rents about 45 minutes to an hour and a half out from the major city, close to where most of us live. Whatever city that is, people that used to have to live in the city because they went into the office 5 days a week are now out and only have to go in once or twice a week. Now, some people are being called back, and it's only 44% of people that are able to work remote jobs right now. 56 are still required to work in the office, which is much more than the 5% we had 10 years ago. Right? It's almost half of the people that have a job can work remotely. It's not quite half, but it's close. But they still have to go in once or twice. So they can't live more than 2 or 3 hours from where they were, and they can't geo arbitrage and move to Thailand, right? And work their remote job. Some can, but not enough to be an impact on housing. So rents have pushed up 35, maybe 45 minutes to an hour and a half away from that city, but prices haven't, because the remote workers don't want to buy. What if their employer calls them back to the office full time, like Michelle? Michelle was called back this year back to the office. Had conversations of, I think I should quit that place. So if rents have pushed up a little bit further out and prices haven't, I was able to find I looked at 11 markets, right? I did a study for a couple of weeks, found two where I found deal after deal after deal that I would pursue. And I also started watching days on market and making lower offers than what was there. So I did two things to adjust for that. But conventional lending, seller financing can almost always beat it, but every single one of my loans has been conventional. I've never done FHA. I've not even used my VA loan. There's a list of reasons why I don't want to do that. I was able to get the return, and you said, $300 cash flow, that's your metric. Mine was always at least 100 per door. I didn't want to risk it for less than that, but per door tells me nothing. What is my cash on cash return? Right? If you want $300 per door and you did it for $5,000 down, sounds pretty good. But if you did it for $3 million down, does $300 a door tell you anything? No. So it's not an accurate thing. What you want is that cash on cash return. And can you beat the average? And is it a positive number, right? You don't want to do, if the area average loses 5% and you can find a deal that only loses 3%, I still wouldn't buy that deal, right? I'm looking to beat the area average and be a positive number. Is it the right asset class? Are you looking at single family or small multifamily or houses with ADUs or mobile homes on acreage? What in your market is working? So there's a lot to look at there. It's a great question. Could take almost could take like a whole Zoom meeting to talk about that. REI, Jared. The sixes, yes. The current all-nighter hider, the current state of interest rates is what slowed transactions. If you can still make a good deal work now, then you may be a good conservative green light to buy. Yes, you imagine what would happen if interest rates went to 3% tomorrow. Like not the Fed rate, but mortgage interest rates. It would free up some things. People would take out mortgages, right? You would see HELOCs again, you'd see cash out refinances again. But home prices would double pretty much overnight. There is not enough move-up buyers waiting to sell their house to flood the market with inventory, because that's a one-for-one transaction anyway, to make prices come down. So don't let current market tell you to buy or not. Two things tell you when. Are you ready? Did you find a deal? A good deal or a great deal? You'll hear a lot of content creators that have reached financial freedom say to pursue only great deals, and that's because they can. I only want to buy great deals going forward because I don't need the good deals. I wouldn't be in this position if I didn't buy great deal or just good deal after good deal after good deal, right? You don't get RBIs without somebody on base. I had to get the base hits. So remember, don't compare year 1 to year 10. If you see a good deal, but it's not great because it's not 15 or 20 or 10% cash on cash return like you heard this guy online get. If your area average is 5 and you find a 7, that might be a great deal in your market. Lavita, you've got some great comments in here. I want to read them, but I don't want to pick on religious people too. So, native to earth. I like your bluntness and would be even blunter. Don't feel bad. Okay, thank you. Yes, the R word. I had to ask if the R word counts if you just say tarded. So, yeah. All right, Jared, we are landlords. We deal with way worse stuff than words. And so I think that's a decision I've come to recently is my most viral viewed videos tend to be about retirement. And I'm almost thinking that's a group I don't want to go viral with because there's so many soft people there that they just, it's not possible. Nobody can do it now. Literally comments where they say, nobody can do it now, but how many people are doing it now? Or use the R word and they say, oh, I have to stop the video because you did that. Don't watch it. If you can't handle someone on YouTube saying the R word, what are you going to do when your tenant uses the N word? Not paying rent, right? Okay. Where'd you go with that? I don't see him in the chat. Didn't think he was going to be here, but Duplex Dave or somebody else, I think, was having trouble getting their tickets out or their comments out. Financial firefighter. I'm helping everyone build thick skin. Good job. I love it. Lavita, I agree with you on no religion, but fascinated by the hard problem of consciousness. Not knowing doesn't mean MSU. Make stuff up. Croydon, I have subscribed for the masterclass. How do I join the members only session? So if you're in the course, that tonight will just be in the course, and I'll post the Zoom link in the chat. If you want to be in the members, somebody might have put it down here. There should be a join button. Sometimes it doesn't show up on phones or tablets. You have to go to a laptop and go on YouTube, and there'll be a join button down there. And for the members only sessions, I want you to understand what you'd be signing up for so that you don't feel like you didn't get what you were signing up for. We do 2 videos a month, sometimes 3, and they're really boring. That's why I don't do it on YouTube. We all jump on Zoom together and we look at deals. Imagine how many, there's 67 people right now, it says, watching this, and there'll be like 1,000 in the next day. But how many people are going to watch a bunch of people on Zoom, open an email, look at a property, and talk about that property for 45 minutes? That's not what people are going to YouTube for. The people on YouTube who watch this content, who want to buy a property and want to learn the skill of looking at a property, and that 45-minute conversation to break down all the nuance of what we're looking at and what we like and what we don't like takes about 90 seconds to actually do. It takes 45 minutes to explain the thought process of what happens in 90 seconds. That happens in those members only courses. Lavita audible version. There you go. The narrator sounds like he uses just for men in his beard. Just for men doesn't work. Thanks, Adam. Santiago. Hey, Dion, can you speak on your approach against for LLCs for rentals? Thank you. I actually am going on Coach Carson's channel here pretty soon. I watch his content. He's the small and mighty investor. He's got a great book out. And I think our thoughts align on a lot of things, not everything, but a lot of things, where I don't want a big portfolio. I wanted the right amount of cash flow from the least amount of units. And I actually got to meet him at the one rental at a time event in Vegas, and we did a video on the binder strategy. But we have a video coming out on LLCs. He recently had an attorney on his channel talking about the pros of LLCs. And I will keep this as short as succinct as I can, because this is a soapbox I can get on for an hour. I have a video on my channel called LLC Rant. I will start with, there are times you should have an LLC, but it's not why people think the reason usually is. One, do you have partners? Yes. Limited liability company is intended to limit you from someone else's mistakes. It does not in any way limit you from your own mistakes. When you are sued, your assets are at risk. Each LLC is your asset. Not only do judges pierce the veil, but in the counties where I exist, they use the 1996 IRS precedents, and they say all single-member LLCs, which means you and a spouse and an LLC, are disregarded entities. There's no asset protection at all. But if you have partners, it'll protect you from their mistakes. Second time, it makes sense to have an LLC if your lending requires it. If you're using a hard money lender or a DSCR loan or something that's asset-based where they go, yep, we'll do this loan, but it has to be in an LLC. Sure. Acquiesce to their request. I get it. My fear with LLCs is that the new investor who doesn't even own a property yet gets stopped in their tracks because some tard, proper use of the word, says, oh, you want an LLC for every property, or every 3 properties in an LLC. So now you got to create one. There's an expense. You got to maintain it and renew it every year. There's an expense. You got to file taxes on each one. So imagine how your attorney and your CPA are saying you should have LLCs because they triple their income. You can't represent yourself in court, even to file an eviction, just to file $145 filing thing. You can go submit the thing with court. It's very easy. But nope, you can't do that in an LLC. Insurance cost goes up. Lending generally goes up. Can't house hack. More likely to be sued. LLC is a company. Companies have deeper pockets than mom and pop landlords. Some areas require that you have a business license if your property's in an LLC. If you're in places like California, and you have a single family house and you rent it out, like my brother does, it is not rent controlled. Put it in an LLC, it is rent controlled. Like there's this long list of reasons why a new investor would get stopped in their tracks. How do you pay yourself? How do you make sure you don't commingle finances with your corporate structure? All that stuff with LLCs is pointless. There's a long list of reasons why none of my properties are in an LLC and never will be. Lumberjack landlord doesn't use LLCs for his rentals. He used it for health care to get insurance at a cheaper rate. Zuber doesn't have LLCs. No, he won't talk about LLCs because he doesn't want to get sued. Sue me. What am I saying? I'm not telling you to have or not have LLCs. I'm telling you the list of reasons why I don't or would if I had partners. Like me and Millennial Mike were going to make an offer. We would have formed an LLC. I have done conventional loans on all my purchases so far. If I was going to do a type of lending that required an LLC, I'd put in an LLC. I was as brief as I could be, Santiago. LLC Rant, Dion Talk will get you to the video where I go into a little bit more detail and actually talk about my 3 forms of asset protection I do use. Native to earth. What would you buy if the profit was the same, 1 quad or 2 duplexes? So if the profit was the same, 1 quad or 2 duplexes, there's a chronology to our investing. When I was just starting out, The two duplexes would have made more sense because I could spread them out 10 miles and be pulling tenants from different sources. So very first or maybe second property, I would have purchased the duplexes. Third or fourth or fifth property, if the profit was the same and the down payment amount would have been the same for the two duplexes or the quad, I probably would have went for the quad because I would be looking at how many mortgages, conventional, can I have in my name? You can have up to 10. There was a period of time where you can only have 4. And so I would look at the fourplex as the ability to have more properties on conventional lending than the duplexes would allow. I stopped at, what do I have now? 6 mortgages, 8 properties. So I never even hit the 10. So it's not even a thing I would have considered now that I looked at it. But chronology, if you're investing, maybe you want a bigger portfolio. The other thing with the quad or the duplexes, I prefer duplexes to quads because if you have a bed bug infestation, a septic system backup, a plumbing root system, whatever, you're impacting less tenants all at the same time. I'm happier with my duplexes, even my triplex. What I like about my triplex is that it's a house and a duplex. Like they're separate. It would be really hard to think of their profit being the same. Right? That it would have to be an exact deal because I'm like Zuber. When it comes to single family house with ADU, duplex, triplex, or fourplex, which one do you like? The best yield, right? So you're in this scenario, I'm giving you the leeway to say you're going to make to the penny the exact same amount. But if one version of them would perform better, I'd probably go that route. That's a good question. I like it. EK, howdy. I don't know that I've seen your name before. I'm 17, okay, and I have around $1,500 in Fidelity, $4,000 in my checking, and around another $4,000 saved up for college. My grandpa sent me to you for advice. So I was wondering what I should do if I wanted to get started early into real estate. It's a great question to get started. I've talked with a lot of people, and I was at an event last year. Hopefully you're still here. It takes me a while to get to your comments, and I understand at 17. I don't know that I would have stayed on a channel like this watching content this long to get my question answered. So if you're still here, good job. I wanted to do an interview with several people at the One Rental at a Time event, and I still have those videos I need to get out. I don't know if you noticed or not, but I stopped editing videos because of the lazy. But I was very selfish. I wanted to do those interviews so I can get to know some of you, right? So I kind of feel bad for that. Some people didn't want to do the interview because they didn't own a rental yet, right? So if you're 17 and you say, I want to get started in real estate, owning a rental is not how you start in real estate. How you start in real estate is step 1, you learn how to save, right? It was great. I have this much here and this much here, and I'm saving it for this thing, right? So if you want to go to college, is it college? Is college going to make you more money, or is it a trade school, or is it going to work, right? You've got life decisions to choose there. But how do you make the most amount of money that you can while not working a job that you hate, right? Don't go start an OnlyFans or don't go out and do coal mining or something, some job that you're not going to like. But what job can you do that will make the most amount of money, and how do you spend the least? In our earlier years, you're going to find a lot of younger people are living with their parents longer to save up money. Some people are moving into apartments but having roommates, right? Eliminating your largest expense. So for a couple of years, from like 17, 18, 19, maybe 20, work in one industry, right? Pick a job, try not to bounce. You can go from company to company, right? If you're a truck driver, you can go drive for 3 different companies. You're still a truck driver for that amount of time. But if you're a truck driver and then you're a cop and then you're a firefighter, that's 3 different careers. Lenders don't like career hopping as much. But for 2 years, you want to work in one type of industry so that you're bankable. You might consider, if your grandfather sent you here for advice, they might co-sign with you, or your parents might, to help you get into your first property. And Michael Zuber says this really well. He's a guy who's got a channel called One Rental at a Time, and he goes and presents at high schools sometimes. You are closer to financial freedom at 17 than you will probably ever be again in your life, unless you really focus on it in your 40s or 50s. How much money do you think every month you would need to survive? 2, 3, maybe 4,000? When you're 30 or 40 with 3 or 4 kids, that quickly becomes 8 or 10,000 to just survive. So right now is the time where there's this thing called house hacking that you might want to watch several videos on. There's several versions. The easiest version is having roommates. If you're like me and you're not a people person, probably not going to be your favorite one. So if you can live with your family for a couple of years, work in one industry and save your down payment, the first place you might want to buy is not a house, right? You're probably still hearing that the American dream is everybody wants to own a house and work for 40 years and retire with a pension. That's the American dream. I don't want that. I'm trying to think, like, I kind of do technically own a house, but I'm retired and don't live in a house. I live in what's called a duplex. So it's two units connected. Now, mine is this way because I'm on the water, but I live for free. I don't have roommates. I don't have people that are all helping me pay rent in my unit, but the other unit is rented out. And so my first duplex, instead of paying $1,500 a month like I was at an apartment, I was paying $300 a month to live in my duplex while the tenant paid almost all of the mortgage. So when you go to buy your first, maybe your second house, there's this thing. Lenders don't want to lend money to somebody who needs it, right? So lenders have fear. When you go to the bank and you say, I would like to borrow money to buy a house, they're going to look at you. How much do you make? How long have you worked in the industry? Have you saved what are called reserves, money that you'll pay for emergencies with, right? They'll go through all these things to just buy a house. Well, if you want to go and buy a duplex, that first 2 years to save up to do that, it's probably going to cost about the same a house would. Houses and duplexes in my area still aren't that very far off in price. That's the easiest way to get started into real estate because the property where you live is the easiest one to get lending on. You only need 3% down. So maybe you live in an area where houses are $100,000. You need $3,000. If you're in an area where houses cost $1 million, like a huge expense, that's $30,000, right? You can buy a house with only $30,000 that costs $1 million to do it if you live there. If you don't live there, lenders often want 10 or 20%. So now you go from $3,000 for that $100,000 house to 10 or $20,000 instead of three. Now, the $1 million house where you could put down 30, all of a sudden you need $100,000 or $200,000 to move in. It becomes like really hard to do when you're 17, 18, or 19. So the first place that you're going to buy, you only need 3% down. If you buy a house or a house with an ADU, so two houses on one property, rent one out, live in the other. And then maybe you can still have roommates. Imagine if you were getting paid to live where you do. Because my next house hack, I purchased a fourplex. So there's 4 units all side by side with garages, up and down units like this. So there was nobody above or below anybody, but they're all next to each other. When I first moved in there, the other 3 units were rented out, and I was making $1,700 a month in profit to live in that property. Right now, you can buy a fourplex with 5% down. This has never been an option for me in the past. This started in 2023 in November. They made a law, like a rule changing, and you can buy a fourplex or a triplex or a duplex with 5% down. So yeah, you might need a little more money than the 3% for a house. But if you save for the next few years, maybe you end up getting a cosigner or something like that, and you buy a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex. How many of your friends are getting paid to live where they do after they turn 18? It's an awesome way to get started. And I think this is for the older people watching. Most of us think of house hacking as a way to get started. It's the lowest down payment. You get a better interest rate, right? EK, when you go to do this, if I went to buy a property, you have to pay interest on the loan. And if my interest on a rental, that's a fourplex, is like a 7, if it was a single family house, it'd be a 6. And if I lived there, it'd be a 5, right? So the less risk the lender takes, the lower my interest rate gets to be. And those were round numbers. You have to talk to a lender every time to see what it actually is going to be. But you can get a better interest rate, a lower down payment if you intend to live in the property. That's how we get started. And that's how most of us think of house hacking. I retired in 2022, right? I invested for about 12 years and then I stopped working, and I'll never work a job again. Some people think YouTube is a job, talking to a camera for a few hours. If you think that's a job, you're going to really struggle with working for a paycheck. So if you can find a way to get into real estate, to get started in real estate by living there, now you have to live there for at least a year. That's what most lenders will want. Some will take 10 months. Some I've heard say 2 years, but you live there for a year. So you don't have to live in that duplex forever. Maybe you do it 2 or 3 times, get 2 or 3 duplexes. By the time you're 30, you have, let's say you bought one every 2 years. You buy one at 20, one at 22, one at 24, and you go all the way up till 30. So you've bought 5 duplexes. but it took you 10 years. Those 10 years are going to happen. Most of your friends aren't ever going to watch content like this. They're going to be out clubbing every weekend. They're going to be thinking of how much work do I have to do to get to the weekend so I can enjoy life? And you're going to be thinking, yeah, this 10 years, 5 or 10 years is not going to be great. It's going to suck. I'm going to work a lot. I'm going to keep buying rentals. I'm going to keep moving every couple of years. But when you're 30, and I know this is hard to think of when you're 17, because there's t-shirts that says never trust anybody over 30. You're gonna turn 30 someday. When you turn 30, look at the people you know around you that still have 30 years of work ahead of them. They'll then be 60. And some people can't even retire then. You're talking 30 years of work at 30 that they still are looking for. It's like 35 probably, right? Or you buy a duplex every 2 years, you turn 30, and now you can travel the world. Go live in any country you want, live in any state. You have, $10,000, $15,000 a month coming in profit because you don't just own 10 rentals. You owned one since you were 20. So you've had one rental for 10 years, 10 years of rents going up, 10 years of chances to refinance to a better interest rate. You've had one property for 8 years, one for 6, one for 4. All of these things have made the cash flow increase because it starts out pretty decent. We talk about making $300 to $500 a month on a rental. Doesn't sound like a lot, but by year 3 or 4, right now I have 18 rental units. I live in one. I made about $240,000 in profit last year. $240,000 after paying all of the expenses, paying the mortgages, putting aside tens of thousands of dollars more than my repairs were to take care of those repairs. I spent about 50 and I made 240 after a decade of investing. The next 10 years are going to happen. And everyone's going to tell you it's too hard to get started now. Somebody told me that every single year I was buying rentals. Hope you come back for more information. I'm going to put my email in the chat. This is for everybody. Everybody can always reach out with questions. But I've got videos on my channel on how to get started, and that would cover it. But that's the idea, EK. I hope that you're still there, and I hope that was helpful. JNYC, I have a question. If you had an RV on a property, are there any issues with renting it out? I've heard they're more expensive to fix. I have a friend that does this. The hard part with the RV is it plugged into power, water, and septic, right? And he's had some where he had it septic and it was no problem, and some where the county shut him down. So talk with your local municipality about how effective can you make it. They're no more expensive to repair than a house. Things are going to break and everything. It is a depreciating asset, right? So are you buying an RV to rent out? Do a cost benefit analysis of the profit versus that thing being worth nothing in 10 years. My friend bought his for $30,000, rents it for $1,200 a month, which sounds like a great cash on cash return, but the $30,000 is basically gone. In 10 or 15 years when that thing is just falling apart, it's not like you can then go sell and recoup your money. So versus putting $30,000 down on a property that doesn't cash flow $1,200 a month, but is getting principal pay down, levered depreciation, so you don't pay any taxes on the income, appreciation on the property, inflation being your friend, making it worth more money, right? To me, there's a reason why I chose structures to invest in more than RVs, but it is a strategy to create cash flow. Bill O'Connell, howdy. And my chat moved again. Jim B says it's better starting at 17 than 52. What's great, Jim, is I interviewed Cody Davis on my channel, right? He's like 24 now and over 100 units, and he's downsizing to a stabilized portfolio now, moving to Eastern Washington. He's just doing phenomenal things. Cody's out there doing Cody things. I interviewed him when he was 20 and he had 30 rentals. And he said, I wish I started sooner. Almost every investor says that. Almost. I don't. So here's the thing that you might struggle with, EK. If you start at 17 and you reach financial freedom by 30 and you've only worked for 10 years and you do that, you might not hate work enough to want to retire. Versus when I was 40 and I worked for another decade and I made it to 50, I was thinking, man, there is nothing on this planet that can make me go back to a job again. I made sure my portfolio was bulletproof, diversified in 2 specific ways. I had enough reserves. So I started working at 8, retire at 52, whatever that math is. That's enough time to know I don't like working. The people who start really young, like Cody, and then retire really young and they're financially free before 30, I've seen some of them go, I think I'm going to go back to work. I want my life to have some purpose. And I think, ugh, no thanks. So, yes, better to start at 17 than 52. But when you start at 17, be ready to wonder if retiring early was the right thing or not. When you're 52 and you start and you reach financial freedom, you know this is the right thing to do. CJ, good having an interview with you in Vegas. Looking forward to the next one. Me too. Basilio, howdy. Makes sense from an insurance perspective to go with the fourplex. Easier to deal with one insurance policy instead of two. There you go. One municipality, one roof, one foundation. I mean, there's things on both sides of the fence there. Howdy, JMC and Richie Rich. Game over. I like it. Yep, youth is your best asset right now. Very true. Picks performance. What if you already have a place to live and just want to rent out both sides right away? So I talk about house hacking often because it was a strategy that was almost required for me because I had a very low income. I was only making 17 bucks an hour. I got laid off from law enforcement. I had a bunch of bad debt. I wasn't able to save the down payment. I needed the better interest rate, right? There are people like Michael Zubert who reach financial freedom and have never house hacked. He does say he should have, and he wishes he would. And if he was starting over, it'd be the first thing he did. But I know a lot of people who don't house hack. They live in their place, they buy a rental and they rent out both sides. You generally have to put more money down. Not always. You're not going to get 5% down. You're going to get probably 10% down usually. There are some times where you can get 5% down on a non-owner occupied, but your interest rate's going to be a little higher. Uh, a lot of people just buy rentals. So I moved from my house into an apartment and rented out the house for 2 years to get around my debt to income ratio. Bought a duplex and started house hacking. 2 years later, I just bought a duplex. I didn't house hack it. A year and a half later, I bought a duplex and didn't house hack it. The house hacking was for me to get started because I didn't make enough money and I was raising 3 kids as a single parent. So saving the 20% down was really hard. But to start out, saving 5% down was a lot easier, getting a better interest rate. And house hacking to add to my savings rate was very helpful. So if you already can save money, you make more money, don't have the bad debt, maybe have two incomes, less kids, no kids, whatever, because you're smart, you don't need to. It just helps. Wealth building journey, house hacking a fourplex once a year for a decade. I became a millionaire by house hacking the one duplex and buying two duplexes. When I purchased the fourplex, so January 2020, my net worth passed $1 million at the exact same time that my debt passed $1 million. Let me know if you don't understand how that works. $1 million in net worth and $1 million in debt. Since 2020, my net worth has gone to 3 million. So 10 years of investing to reach a million, 4 years. I guess I'm still investing. I'm just not trying to reach 3 million. That's good math. That's fuzzy money. Picks, then you will be seen as an investor and not a householder. Unfortunately, yeah, people do it all the time. Okay. Lavita, are you? And then my chat moved, of course. Are you drinking water that makes your eyes water from a rainbow trout mug? No. I'm a nerd. In case you don't know, this is a Forgotten Realms map. There's a Dragonlance map behind it. When I do my whiteboard stuff, I have a supernatural pointer to touch the whiteboard with, and Mark a Cane tattoo from Supernatural. This is a dragon egg from Game of Thrones, which does have the water that makes my eyes water in it. A rainbow trout mug. That's good. I might start calling it that. Uh, some people are in their 80s working as greeters at Walmart. And where did I see somebody recently? Where was I? I saw somebody and I thought, oh, it hurts you to get out of bed and you still have to work. I think it was Lowe's. Yeah. One of the problems of reaching financial freedom is trying not to, you can't save the world. You're not going to boil the ocean. You're gonna make a YouTube channel and you're going to have 20,000 people subscribe to it. And you're probably going to find 200 that take action and do stuff. Like the economy of scale of actually getting people to financial freedom is you want to reach as many people as possible to funnel down to the ones that are actually going to do something with it. But there are people you'll never interact with that you think the average American with $16,000 in credit card debt had the balance for over 2 years. If I had money on a credit card from 1 month to the next, well, I don't know if I'd sleep, right? Like I'd be thinking, okay, how can I get rid of this? How can I get rid of this bad debt or worse debt? Because that has an adjustable rate, high interest rate, like all of the negative things. And there are people that live like that all the time. And when you reach financial freedom, and I made this the other day, the most important thing is once you reach financial freedom, that you turn around, you reach down and you grab somebody else's hand and you drag them up there with you. So Chester might be kicking and screaming, but I'm dragging him along. It came down to, hey, let's pick a new strategy. You've studied this one long enough. Let's get you investing on this property you're closing on soon. That's why I'm here, to find the Chesters and the Curtises and the Michelles and the Josh and Marys and the Daves and the everybody that I could say, you know, we should all have a shirt. Be like Frank. You want to be Frank. You want to be the person putting money to work so your spouse doesn't have to, which will turn into him not having to as well. PE turned RE. Speaking of people, I'm in the 5-year suck thinking of getting a roommate, but have to people. Yes. Speaking of retiring, thank you, EK. I hope that helps. And I'll put my email in the chat. Reach out with any questions. That's always, I offer that to everybody. Sometimes I miss an email. Send it again. Nice. Duplex Dave, was that your chat? Did I see that pop up there? I think I did my chat moved, which is great, which I appreciate. Yeah, Duplex Dave, howdy to y'all too. Lavita, EK, if you start analyzing and saving for deals now at 17, you will only have awesome in your future. Very true. JMC, how much do you keep in reserves? 12K per property, and do you increase, decrease? You have no W-2. So this actually was one of the questions on the BiggerPockets Money episode that's coming out next week. Reserves, I don't know how we got on the topic. I'm a Mindy Jensen fan, so I was trying to not fanboy out, but I wanted to stay on topic and I kept getting off topic. But we got on the topic of reserves. And so I broke it down. I even said it in the Marine, in the video. As a Marine, it has to be kindergarten simple. And I showed my crayons ready to eat, so that I am a Marine because we have crayons ready to eat in the package here. But it's not per property. It's not based on net worth. It was just a round number that made sense. When I had 7 units or less, I kept $10,000 in the reserve. That would let me deal with an eviction, broken garage door, a water heater, going through a tenant turnover, right? When I passed 7 things, I thought more things could happen at the same time. So I raised it to 30,000. So it wasn't per unit. It was just 30,000 makes more sense than 10. So I pushed it up to there. And that was good up to like 16 rental units. And then when I retired, as soon as I lost the W-2, which I call that drug that kills your dreams, I raised it to 50,000. So I keep 50,000 in a reserve. It's a no touch, scorched earth kind of thing. I don't even generally do repairs out of that. The cash flow handles repairs. Everything above that 10,000, 30,000, or 50,000 should be put to work to earn more money. Like that's the point of money. So EK, if you're still here, here's something I want you to try to understand. The biggest difference between poor people, middle class, and wealthy people, rich people, isn't how much money they have or how much money they make. That's what most people think it is. Poor people think the purpose of money is for things. If you want more stuff, you work for more money. The middle class, most people that are striving for the middle class, think the purpose of money is leverage. They want a good credit score so they can get a big house and a nice car, and people think they are successful. So they're in a lot of debt and have to work until their 60s. Rich people understand that the purpose of money is to make money. When you make money and you put it to work and you give your money a job, that's how you stop working. And not very many people figure that out. Jim B, all very true. You don't know what you don't know. Very true. The Dunning-Kruger effect. I love my work. Now the people at work. There you go. Duplex Dave. Closing on a duplex tomorrow. Congratulations. Very exciting. The deals, all though harder to find, are out there if you stay consistent, network, and keep looking. Congratulations. That is very true. They are out there. It's not going to be easy. It's never been easy, or everyone would be doing it. And it never feels like, okay, I'm going to do this deal and it's just going to make money. It's you can buy the property and you're thinking, oh, the things that can go wrong. No risk, no reward. So we mitigate the risk. All-nighter higher productive debt adds to net worth. Unproductive debt detracts from net worth. Very true. JMC, I am a toast if I start in 2026 because I need my reserves, down payment, 2 years of W-2 for taxes before purchases to be valid. Yes, if you do conventional lending, if you do seller financing or a DSCR loan, that stuff goes away. You might still need the down payment, closing costs and reserves, but the 2 years in there and debt to income ratio, not so much. A wealth building journey. It was probably the most insane market over the last few years when I decided to get started in 2021. I agree with you. And I think we could say that sentence every 3 years for the last 10. Matt, the lumberjack landlord, would probably say for the last 23, right? And I'll keep this short. 2011, when I started saving, everybody said it was a double dip crash. We just had the biggest housing crash in the recorded history. Don't buy real estate. Do you think that was a great market to be learning how to save money to buy rentals was? 2013, when I closed on a duplex and housing prices went above where they were in 2008, you think that was an easy market to buy in when everybody was saying prices are higher than they were during the last crash. This has to crash. It's unsustainable. In 2015, when the silver tsunami was hitting and all the baby boomers were going to retire and the market was going to be flooded with inventory, and I was buying another duplex and everybody was saying, don't do it, it's going to crash. 2018, interest rates went above 6%, and everybody knows you can't buy a property and make money when it's above 6%. 2020, I'm going to say the word that makes people block my channel. We have a pandemic. We have a stock market crash. We have an eviction moratorium. We have people going into forbearance. We have all these reasons why nobody should buy real estate, and I bought two in 2020. Then 2022, interest rates double or triple. Every single year of my life, people have said you can't do it now. You can only do it then. In 2028, people are going to look back at today and say, I wish I bought in 2024. You could buy a duplex, triplex, or fourplex for only 5% down. That's crazy. You could buy in a place where remote workers could pay a higher rent, but the prices of properties hadn't gone up yet. Like we had this window of opportunity in 2024 and we missed it because we were waiting for the crash. And then some tard made a comment that 2026 will be better because we're due for a correction. They watched too many Crash Bro videos. Hey, Rob, we're not on a boat this time. We weren't on a boat last time. We were on a dock in Manchester, which has a great Seattle skyline view and a pretty decent El Carbon Mexican restaurant. It's really good. Wealth building journey. It was probably the most insane market. Yep, there you go. Good evening from Grandview, Washington. Flavio, howdy. Aces up. How much does crime rate play into your strategy? I don't pay attention to crime rate because having worked in law enforcement for 8 years, I know that all those numbers are made up. You want the mayor and the chief to look good, you suppress what you're reporting. You want them to look like they're making an improvement. You have a quarter where you bust everybody and then the next quarter where you don't, so your numbers come down. It's all made up. Check with law enforcement to see where they're not allowed to go alone, where they have to go with partners. Ask property managers where they won't manage a property and learn your market. That's about as much as it plays into me. And for my markets, I can specifically know I was investing in 2 counties for a decade. I'm now in Kitsap County. Kitsap County, there's a town called Bremerton. Bremerton is divided into like 4 sections. One section I've completely eliminated because it's not safe. 3 sections of the town of Bremerton I would own in. I own in a different part of Kitsap County. In Pierce County, it was basically this 3-block section about a mile long of this street called McKinley Avenue. Spanaway was a little rough, but it's better now. In Tumwater, it's 301 T Street. Anything within a half a mile of there, I don't want to own. Real estate is local. And when it comes to picking a market, I don't look at all the things everybody talks about. I'm a teaching assistant for BiggerPockets real estate boot camps, and they teach, and so I don't think they're wrong. It's just not what I do. They teach, and I can't share stuff, but they have like 12 things you're looking for when you look at a market. None of that matters to me. I picked a market where I had trusted boots on the ground because any market has the places I would own in and the places I wouldn't, properties I would own and properties I wouldn't. So crime rate, not so much, but knowledge of the local market does dictate where and I will and won't own a property. So that was a good question. I hope my answer helped. Duplex Dave, question. I'm still finding some deals, but capped out with 10 conventional loans. Would you suggest DSCR, hard money, lender to continue scaling, or seller financing? Absolutely. If you're going beyond 10, a duplex, Dave, I don't know if this is still an option for you, but the limit of 10 conventional loans doesn't kick in for house hacking. You can continue to house hack every year beyond 10 conventional loans and have 30 or 40, depending on how long you lived and how many times you wanted to move. So I would consider possible house hacking, even if it was just for a year, especially if you're a nomad and traveling all over the place. Where you live is where you live. But DSCR, I've absolutely considered them. And the cool thing with DSCR is it goes up to 10 units or 8 units, depending on the lender. It's generally more money down and sometimes a worse interest rate. Sometimes I've seen it invert where it was a better interest rate than conventional. So pay attention to those. But I would look at seller financing too. You can incorporate that in there. And then what is your goal with your portfolio? Right? If you're wanting 100 plus units, it's Matt the Lumberjack Landlord and Zuber, study them and mimic everything they do. My goal is not a bigger portfolio. I wanted the right amount of cash flow from the least amount of units. And so I will slowly add properties, but I don't know that I'll get beyond 10 conventional loans anytime soon. Mick, howdy. Rob, you thought the purpose of money was women. Well, how does that saying go? If I had $1 for every woman that didn't find me attractive, eventually they would find me attractive. Jim B, some banks do a portfolio loan to bundle them. They do. Yes, portfolio loans are also an option. Cash flow is freeing. Yes, it is. Class of 2032. Awesome. Can hear a minute. Good then. Looking forward to it. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, although it is a dim light right now. Yes, it absolutely is. Real estate is a get-rich-quick scheme. The trick is convincing people that 10 years is quick. JMC, do you pay attention to climate change for potential markets? Okay. Oh, this hurts my brain. Listen to the great lectures. So I'm in my 50s. I've literally heard this. In 10 years, we're going to run out of oil. That was 30 years ago. In 10 years, the ice age is going to kick in and we're all going to freeze to death. It's 27 years ago. Y2K is going to wipe us out. Global warming. Oh, it hasn't happened? We're going to call it climate change. This is from the Great Lessons. So this is the people that Neil deGrasse Tyson learns from. 500,000 years ago, the temperature on Earth was significantly hotter than it is now. What do you think the CO2 level in the air was? The CO2 level, the thing that's causing global warming. It's like 30 or 40%. It was most of the atmosphere. And people now, you know what we have now? It's ticked up. It went up a little. Our recorded data shows that it was 3%, and it's now closer to 4% when the planet needed 30 or 40 to make the plant life that we live on. So no, I don't think climate change is a thing. I attack religious people. I attack left-wing crazy nut jobs. I attack flat earthers. I'll attack anybody that has a concept that has been proven wrong, but meets a political agenda, so people keep spouting it. Like when you say pandemic, when people actually put out tweets that said, we need to make this seem worse than it possibly could be so we can get Trump out of office, and then people fall for it and let it be thought of as worse than it possibly was. Yes, JMC, don't drink the Kool-Aid with climate change. The Sahara used to be a forest. Things like that happen all the time. Water levels rising and not rising, we have not seen any of it. You have the actual scientists saying this is made up. You have the scientists that represent the media saying, absolutely, follow the money, you find the science. Uh, no, I don't let that choose. I live in Washington, where everybody pretty much says we need more global warming because it's July. It was raining all day yesterday. So that was a good one. Thank you. When am I going to write a book about real estate? I think when I don't get canceled for saying things like I just did, because it doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't meet the narrative of the people who own Google, that owns YouTube, that and here's an example. Todd Baldwin. Todd Baldwin goes on BiggerPockets. He goes on Millennial Millionaire. He's in his 30s, financial freedom, multi-millionaire, rents by the room, lives near Seattle, makes content, gets 50 to 60,000 views per video. His channel's blowing up. He made one video on socialism. And just saying the word socialism stops YouTube from sharing the video with more people. All night hider. NDT is an intelligent moron denying that science is all about questioning everything. He's got some brilliant statements, and then he goes a little weird sometimes. Native to Earth. If accepting the benefits of Bitcoin is called being orange pilled, then I'll call discovering the freedom of real estate being green pilled. Nice. I haven't heard green pill yet. Rob, it's Seattle. Only in the movies it rains every day. And if you're ever talking to somebody in the US and in Washington, we'll say it rains every day so people don't move here. That was a good question, JMC. No, I don't let climate change factor into my decisions. Trying to think if I hope you don't think I was being sarcastic towards you. Just the movement that you've heard of that is a load of BS. So it's a great question. That's because it's for a comment, which I'm going to wrap this up here in a little bit. If there's any more questions in, please get them in. I got to get ready for the course call that's at 6 tonight. There will be a members call tomorrow. Let's take a poll. Tomorrow's Wednesday. So there's an accountability group going on with Frank. Frank, does anybody know what time Frank's accountability group is tomorrow? I don't want to do it at the same time. So it's probably either going to be 3 or 4 or 5 in the afternoon. We'll do a members call for the people who can't make it on the weekend. James, no, it's funny. Thank you. Joshua, howdy. Do you have a suggestion to get your tenants to respond to your welcome letter? On the 3 properties we've purchased, it's been a bit like pulling teeth. Otherwise, have been great tenants. I've struggled with a couple tenants to get them to respond too. But do you need them to respond? In my welcome letter, I will also say, here's my email. This is how you contact me. Please send me pictures of your driver's licenses, right, your identification to this email. So I give them an action item. If you just give it to them and you say, hey, I'm your landlord. This is when the sale went through. Please make sure you don't pay the old landlord. This is how you contact me. Here's how I like to collect rents, is what you find every time you Google landlord introduction letter. There's no call to action. It just says, this is how I collect rent. So now you sit back and you wait a few weeks to think, okay, they're going to pay the rent this month. Give them a call to action. I need you to send me pictures of your photo, your IDs by this date. And now, if they don't, you actually have an articulable reason to reach out and say, this is why I'm contacting you. So it's at 6. So we'll do it at 3, 4, or 5 tomorrow. Let me know. For members only. That's Pacific Standard is the 6 o'clock is when that is. So JMC, it'll either be 3, 4, or 5 Pacific tomorrow. So I got 1, 4. Let me know. We'll let a couple more go through and then probably wrapping up for the night. Everybody let me know what you're drinking tonight. This is water. 4? Okay, we got a couple 4s. 4 will work. Dennis says 5. Normal water. 5 o'clock. Got a couple 5s, couple 4s. We'll see how the day goes. So look for one tomorrow afternoon, either at 4 or 5. You guys can message me with continued votes. I hope these questions made you think. The idea is financial freedom is a possibility. It might be with stocks. It might be with rentals. You might be able to do this even if other people have different opinions than you do. Everybody have an evening full of amazing. If you're in the course, I will see you in 25 minutes. Remember, you can't drink all day unless you start early.